What's good? What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of The Urban Platform Speaks. Make sure to like and subscribe as you tune into the channel and check out the content. And with that being said, man, I wanna react to a video that Jason Whitlock just basically he made recently, right? And he's got a panel on there. And they're basically talking about how they think how ESPN is looking like they're going to shelf Stephen A. Smith in favor of Pat McAfee, right? And I've spoken on this topic before, basically, and I kind of feel the same way, right? And I think the fact that Pat McAfee built his own platform, and Pat McAfee has always been, he's been like a guy who is really upfront and original. He's not somebody like Stephen A. Smith, who's like more so a performer, and showy, right? Pat McAfee has more substance than him, right? And I thought that in the long run, that's what fans want to see. They want to see somebody who is real and somebody who's legit, and somebody who they know is just not really performing up there, right? Or saying a mouthpiece for the network, right? And I think that's the way like social media, as far as like when we sports talk is going. They want people who are you know who really who are really real, and people who are, like I said, don't have an agenda. So this is the discussion that was had on the Jason Whitlock show. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to play the audio and I'm gonna come back and give my reaction.
Here's the thing, and I'm a big admirer of Josh Pate. I was watching his clips yesterday getting ready for the season. I think Josh understands what he is. College football. That's it again. That's his lane. He's good at that. He's not a fork trying to be a knife. So all those guys you mentioned, I think they play well during football. Okay, so you want to develop the next or the guy that follows Stephen A. Smith. Boy, that's going to take a while. Because remember, if you look at Stephen A's ascension, all of this came after he got fired the first time. And Jason, how long do you think it took for him to grab a hold of his role at least 5-6 years, right? At least.
Yeah.
Okay. Good luck with that.
Well,
good. And plus, they're paying him a lot of money. Chase, you got to get something out of that contract.
they're paying him a lot of money, and I get it. But I'm telling you, they're ready to move on. They're in bed with the National Football League. If they need some black guy that can talk NFL, be entertaining about it, and sell the league. Stephen A's on a clock, man. That they have snapped. I mean, again, he's Fredo. They finally realized that he is Fredo, and he's not built for a larger role. And at some point, they're going to take him out on a boat, shoot him in the back of the head, and let him go run for president or do whatever he really wants to do, because he's never liked sports and he's never known anything about sports. He's one of the most uninformed guys. Basketball players believe it. Football players certainly believe it. Anybody that's worked with him certainly knows it. I just think Stephen A. has reached his expiration date. He's made a bunch of money. He can go talk politics with Sean Henry.
All right, so let me say this about what Jason Whitlock is saying, right? I just think that I do think that, and I just said this a few minutes ago. I just think that people want somebody. They want to listen to people who know what they're talking about, not just somebody who um, who is a mouthpiece for the network, right? And so because that's what sports media is going back to, if you listen to Stephen A. Smith talk about football or basketball or baseball, it's always it seems like somebody is giving him stats and facts to talk about, whereas though he's not talking about sports from his perspective. It's like he's prepping for the shows and he don't really know about it, and it comes across as the fact that he don't know about it. Whereas though when you listen to Pat McAfee and you listen to him talk about football, then you because and you know that he's a player and he played the sport So, and he's entertaining, so it's a lot different, and it comes off as more genuine than when Stephen A. Smith talks about it. So, if he don't have any credibility when it comes to basketball, baseball, or football, then what, like what use is he to the network?
Entity or do whatever he wants to do from here. Hats off to him and congratulations, Charles. Am I going too far here?
I think every one of y'all is walking toward the center, and that's where the answer is. There's an executive at ESPN, and he is convinced that he knows what he's doing because he's done this before, and he's going to double down on it. When Stephen A. got that big contract, he showed up on everything. I'm not sure they didn't have him on the ESPN commercials. He was on NFL Game Day. He was, I mean, not NFL, NBA. He was in the studio show. It was Stephen A., Stephen A., Stephen A. And now it's as if somebody at ESPN, the same person, is saying, no, I had the right idea. I had the wrong person doing it. Let me give Pat McAfee this same role, and I'm going to let him do it, and I'm going to put him in front of your television, pro, college, whatever. You're going to see Pat McAfee. It is the exact same playbook from what they did with Stephen A. It didn't work, and they came to the conclusion it didn't work because it's not a good idea. It didn't work because of him. Let Pat try it. It's the same thing.
Huh. All right, and so now I can agree with that, right? Because Pat McAfee, like I said, he's a football guy and he knows football. Stephen A. Smith really can't be an ambassador for the sport because, and I'm not even saying that you need to have been a professional football player, but Stephen A. Smith just don't seem like he really know a lot about football, right? Football, because football is a fun game to watch, but you still need somebody expert to break it down. You just need an expert to really to break it down. And Stephen A. Smith is not that. He's not that person.
I think you make a great point, and I think it's a better bet, because Pat McAfee has actual accomplishments, played in the NFL, built his own following outside of the ESPN bubble. This is a much better bet than Stephen A., who has been completely dependent on ESPN. Without ESPN, Stephen A. is nothing. He's an uninformed DEI hire. I'm just keeping it real with you. Scap, you're nodding your head.
All right, so yeah, I think and see that's what works in and I think ESPN wants to team up with somebody who has built their they built their own platform, and it's like that in entertainment across the board. If you look at social social media platforms, like sponsors teaming up with people who build their own platform, people who have a lot of followers, right? And that's no different than what Pat McAfee did. When you look at the music industry, right? Like music industries, they stopped developing talent. They started finding guys who were out there who had their own following. And they teamed up with those guys, or men or women, people who had their own following, had their own, their own platforms. And they just, because it's so much more money to develop somebody. It's so much more time consuming to develop somebody. So why not, start doing business with people who develop their own, who develop themselves. And that's what Pat McAfee is. Stephen A. Smith is somebody who was manufactured and made by the network, right? And so outside of that network, people really, he really don't have any type of credibility outside of what the network gives him, right? And so people know that that's not what's selling right now, so that's another reason I think that Stephen A. Smith is on his way out.
Ed, what do you think of Charles's point here?
Yeah, I do. I agree. I think he did make a great point, and I think it is impressive that what Pat McAfee built. I mean, Jason, to your point that you're just talking about, Stephen A. Smith, all of his influence, all of his perceived power and everything comes directly from ESPN. Like he's basically, Stephen A. Smith is like an actor in the Marvel movie franchises. Like you can plug and play anybody in that role and just, stamp Marvel on it. And he's going to be a big star and the movie's going to make a ton of money. But what McAfee did is build this immense, massive following with nobody's help, basically just on his own merit and on his own name. So I think he does carry much more power and influence naturally than Stephen A. Smith does. And probably ESPN and the upper execs are taking notice of that and saying, like if this guy could cultivate that kind of a following without us, what can he do with us?
And basically, like I said, and this is going to not just in sports, but entertainment in general. You build your own following. You gain the credibility of the people, whereas though Stephen A. Smith didn't do that, and so that's why Stephen A. Smith don't really have the following and the credibility. He basically came to the network and said, "I'll say or do anything they want me to do," and that was his way in. But the fans don't want that. Fans are not responding to that, and so that's why the network is finally catching on, and they're gonna elevate and see how this thing goes, in my opinion, with Pat McAfee and people like Pat McAfee. I think this is the start of a trend when it comes to sports, this big sports network. So that's my take. Make sure to like and subscribe. Don't forget to leave a comment, and I'll check you all out in the next video. Peace.